She stood before the mirror in her wedding gown, trembling fingers struggling with the zipper she couldn't reach. Behind her, a man who had spent 3 years fetching her coffee and organizing her calendar stepped forward. His calloused hands that had learned gentleness from braiding his daughter's hair each morning, found the delicate zipper pull. As the silk glided upward along her spine, he leaned close to her ear. His whisper would shatter everything she believed about this day, about her future husband, about the man standing right behind her. Your husband is not coming. What happened next would change 2 broken lives forever. Marcus Reynolds hadn't planned on becoming a single father at 32. Life, as it often does, had made that decision for him on a rainy Tuesday evening 3 years ago when Jenna, his wife of 4 years, had placed her wedding ring on the kitchen counter beside a note that contained exactly 17 words. I can't do this anymore. I'm not meant to be a mother. Please don't look for me. He had stood in that kitchen for what felt like hours, the sound of his 18-month-old daughter crying from her crib upstairs slowly pulling him back to reality. That night, something fundamental shifted inside Marcus. The man who had dreamed of corporate success and climbing ladders transformed into something simpler, something more essential. He became a father first and everything else second. The apartment they lived in wasn't much to look at. 2 bedrooms in a building where the elevator worked only on alternating days, and the hallway always smelled faintly of someone's overcooked dinner. But Marcus had painted Lily's room himself. Spending 3 weekends getting the shade of lavender exactly right because she had pointed at a flower in the park and declared it the most beautiful color in the whole wide world. Her tiny bed was pushed against the wall beneath a window that caught the morning sun, and Marcus had hung curtains with little butterflies on them that his own mother had sewn before she passed. Every detail of that room told a story of a father trying desperately to be enough. Mornings in the Reynolds household began at 5:30 sharp, not by choice but by necessity. Marcus would ease out of bed in the darkness, his body moving through the routine with the muscle memory of 1,000 repetitions. Shower first, always quick. The water never quite hot enough because the building's ancient boiler couldn't keep up with demand. Then shaving in the foggy mirror, nicking himself at least once a week because his mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating the day's logistics. By 6 he was in the kitchen, packing Lily's lunch with the precision of a surgeon. Apple slices cut just thin enough that her small teeth could manage them. A sandwich with the crusts removed, peanut butter on one side and just a whisper of jelly on the other. Exactly how she liked it. A small container of goldfish crackers because every child deserves something that feels like a treat. Lily would wake on her own around 6:30, padding into the kitchen with her stuffed rabbit Mr. Buttons trailing behind her. She was 3 now, and Marcus still caught his breath sometimes when he looked at her. She had his dark curly hair but her mother's eyes, those gray-green depths that seemed to see right through everything. "Morning, Daddy," she would say, her voice still thick with sleep, and Marcus would scoop her up and hold her against his chest for a moment longer than necessary. These morning embraces had become sacred to him, small deposits of love stored up against the long hours of separation that would follow. Breakfast was always a negotiation. Lily wanted pancakes every single day, and Marcus wanted her to have something with protein at least 3 times a week. They had reached an uneasy compromise involving scrambled eggs shaped like hearts, and the promise of weekend pancakes that kept them both mostly satisfied. He would sit across from her at their small kitchen table, watching her eat while simultaneously reviewing his mental checklist for the day. Had he signed the permission slip for her daycare field trip? Was there enough milk in the refrigerator for tomorrow morning? When was the last time he had washed her favorite blanket, the one she couldn't sleep without? The daycare drop-off was always the hardest part of Marcus's day. Little Sprouts Learning Center was run by a kind woman named Mrs. Patterson who had raised 4 children of her own and understood the particular anxiety of parents who had to leave their hearts in someone else's care. Marcus would walk Lily to the door, crouching down to her level for their goodbye ritual. Butterfly kiss on the left cheek, Eskimo kiss on the nose, real kiss on the forehead, and then the words they always exchanged. "How much do I love you?" he would ask. "To the moon and back and around again." She would answer, her small arms squeezing his neck one final time before she bounded off to join her friends. Marcus would stand at the window for just a moment, watching her settle into the morning activity, making sure she smiled before he turned away. Some mornings the smile came quickly. Other mornings, particularly in those early days after Jenna left, Lily would press her face against the glass with tears streaming down her cheeks, and Marcus would have to force his feet to carry him away, when every fiber of his being screamed at him to run back inside. Those days, he would sit in his car in the parking lot, breathing slowly, reminding himself that she was safe, that she was loved, that he was doing the best he could with an impossible situation. The bus ride to work took 47 minutes on a good day, longer when traffic conspired against him. Marcus used this time to transition from father to employee, a transformation that required more effort than anyone at the office ever realized. He would review his tasks for the day, mentally rehearsing conversations and anticipating problems before they arose. The corporate headquarters of Winters Design and Architecture occupied the top 6 floors of a gleaming downtown building, all glass and steel and the kind of aggressive modernity that was supposed to inspire creativity. Marcus worked in the administrative department on the 34th floor, a position that put him in daily contact with the company's upper management. His desk sat just outside the corner office of Victoria Winters, the company's CEO and the daughter of the firm's legendary founder. Marcus had started in the mailroom 4 years ago, back when Jenna was still home and life had followed a predictable pattern. His reliability and attention to detail had been noticed, and promotions had followed. Executive assistant wasn't exactly the career he had imagined during his college years when he had majored in business with dreams of running his own company someday. But it was stable work with decent benefits and regular hours, and for a single father, those things mattered more than ambition. Victoria Winters was not an easy woman to work for. At 38, she had spent her entire adult life proving that she deserved the position she held, that her name on the building didn't mean she hadn't earned her place. She was brilliant and demanding, with standards so high that most assistants lasted less than 6 months before finding reasons to transfer to other departments. Marcus had survived 3 years in her orbit, learning to anticipate her needs before she voiced them, to interpret her moods from the particular set of her shoulders, to navigate the complex politics of the executive floor with a diplomat's grace. Their professional relationship had developed its own rhythm over time. Victoria took her coffee black with exactly 1 ice cube to bring it to the perfect drinking temperature. She preferred her meetings to start 2 minutes early and her documents printed in 12-point Garamond. She hated surprise phone calls and loved handwritten notes. She worked through lunch most days but would occasionally accept a salad from the cafe downstairs if Marcus placed it on her desk without comment. These details lived in Marcus's mind alongside the memorized verses of Lily's bedtime stories, both equally important to the roles that defined his life. The office saw Marcus as unflappable, steady, the kind of person who could be relied upon regardless of circumstance. They didn't see the exhaustion he carried in his bones, or the constant calculations running through his mind. How many sick days did he have left if Lily caught the cold making rounds at daycare? Could he leave 15 minutes early on Thursday for her dance recital, without jeopardizing his position? Was there any possibility of working from home on days when the babysitter canceled? These questions followed him everywhere, a background hum of anxiety that never fully quieted. Victoria noticed things about Marcus that he didn't realize she noticed. The way he always kept his phone face up on his desk, never silenced, ready to respond instantly if the daycare called. The photo of his daughter in a simple silver frame, the only personal item in his otherwise immaculate workspace. The careful way he scheduled his lunch breaks around her nap time so he could call and hear from Mrs. Patterson that Lily was sleeping peacefully. She noticed, too, the absence of any partner in his life, though she had never asked directly, and he had never volunteered the information. Their interactions had remained strictly professional for the first 2 years of their working relationship. Good morning and good evening and everything between, dedicated to the business of running a successful architecture firm. But small changes had begun to accumulate in recent months. Shifts so subtle that neither of them had consciously registered what was happening. Victoria had started asking about his weekends with something more than polite disinterest. Marcus had begun noticing when she seemed particularly stressed, bringing her chamomile tea without being asked and clearing her afternoon schedule, so she could catch her breath. The announcement of Victoria's engagement had come 6 months ago, arriving like a thunderclap on a clear day. Randall Pierce was everything Marcus was not. Old money and older connections. A jaw that belonged on magazine covers, a family name that opened doors throughout the city's social elite. They had met at a charity gala. The kind of event where people wrote checks the size of Marcus's annual salary, and called it a pleasant evening. Randall had pursued Victoria with the confidence of a man who had never been denied anything he wanted. And within 3 months, a ring that probably cost more than Marcus's apartment sparkled on her finger. The engagement had changed something in the office atmosphere, though Marcus couldn't have named exactly what. Victoria was busier than ever, pulled in 1,000 directions by wedding planning and work demands and the expectations of 2 prominent families preparing to merge their social kingdoms. She seemed happy, or at least she smiled when Randall's name was mentioned, but Marcus thought sometimes that her smiles didn't quite reach her eyes. He dismissed these observations as irrelevant. The wishful thinking of a man who had no business paying such close attention to his boss's emotional state. Wedding preparations had consumed the office for months. Marcus found himself coordinating with florists and caterers, blocking out calendar time for dress fittings and venue visits. Fielding calls from Victoria's mother and future mother-in-law with their competing visions for the perfect society wedding. He learned more about table linens and flower arrangements than he had ever wanted to know. All while maintaining his actual job responsibilities, and racing home each evening to scoop up his daughter and pretend that his world wasn't slowly filling with thoughts of another woman. Lily had become his anchor during this strange season. Every evening, after the dinner dishes were washed and the bath was taken and the pajamas were pulled on, they would curl up together on her narrow bed for story time. These moments felt sacred to Marcus. A nightly ritual of whispered words and soft illustrations and his daughter's warm weight against his side. She would fight sleep with everything she had, asking for one more story. One more glass of water. One more anything to stretch these precious minutes together. And Marcus would give in more often than he should, knowing that morning would come too quickly and with it another day of being someone he didn't fully recognize. The weeks before the wedding brought a strange tension to the office. Randall had begun appearing more frequently, striding through the corridors with the proprietary air of a man surveying his future territory. He barely acknowledged Marcus, looking through him as though executive assistants were part of the furniture. This didn't bother Marcus, who had long ago made peace with his invisibility to certain kinds of people. What bothered him was the way Victoria changed when Randall was present. Her confidence dimmed somehow, her voice becoming lighter, her opinions becoming flexible in ways that Marcus had never witnessed before. The conversation Marcus overheard 3 days before the wedding was not intended for his ears. He had returned to his desk to retrieve a folder he needed for a meeting, moving quietly as was his habit. Randall's voice carried through the partially open door of Victoria's office, sharp and dismissive. "We've discussed this. After the wedding you'll step back from the day-to-day operations. Mother has very specific ideas about how Pierce wives conduct themselves." Victoria's response was too soft for Marcus to hear, but Randall's reply came through clearly. "It's a family business, Victoria. My family now. Surely you understand that appearances matter." Marcus stood frozen at his desk, the folder forgotten in his hands. He knew he should move, should make noise to announce his presence, should pretend he hadn't heard anything at all. But his feet seemed rooted to the carpet. Victoria's voice rose slightly, a thread of the steel he knew so well weaving through her words. "My father built this firm from nothing. It's my legacy." Randall laughed, the sound casual and cruel. "And you've done wonderfully, darling. But the Pierce Foundation has certain expectations. We'll find you a lovely charity to chair instead." The meeting that followed was a blur for Marcus. He took notes and scheduled follow-ups and performed all the functions his position required. But his mind was elsewhere. The conversation he had overheard settled into his chest like a stone. He thought of Victoria's years of work, her 12-hour days and weekend strategy sessions, and the passion that lit her face when a project came together exactly right. He thought of her being reduced to a charity figurehead while her family's company passed into other hands. And he thought, with a guilt he couldn't examine too closely, that Randall Pierce did not deserve her. The night before the wedding, Lily asked a question that pierced straight through Marcus's carefully maintained walls. They were halfway through Goodnight Moon, her favorite despite being years past the intended reading level, when she tugged his sleeve and looked up at him with those green eyes. "Daddy, are you ever going to get married again?" The question hung in the air between them, unexpected and impossible to dismiss. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart?" Marcus managed. Lily shrugged her small shoulders. "The girls at school say you need a wife. They say I need a mommy." She paused. "I told them I have you and you're enough. But sometimes you look sad, Daddy. Would a wife make you not sad?" Marcus set the book aside and pulled his daughter onto his lap, holding her close while he searched for words. "Sometimes grown-ups feel sad even when they have everything they need," he said finally. "And you, my love, are more than enough. You're everything. Do you understand?" Lily nodded against his chest, but her next words were muffled and sleepy and devastating. "I just want you to be happy, Daddy. You deserve to be happy." Marcus held her until she drifted off, then carefully transferred her to her bed and stood at the window for a long time, watching the city lights blur through unexpected tears. The morning of the wedding dawned gray and uncertain, the kind of weather that couldn't decide whether to storm or clear. Marcus woke before his alarm, a knot of unspecified dread already tight in his stomach. This was supposed to be his day off, but Victoria had asked him weeks ago to be available, just in case any last-minute details needed handling. The request had seemed reasonable at the time. Now, as Marcus dressed in the suit he reserved for special occasions, he wondered why he had agreed so readily. Mrs. Patterson had agreed to keep Lily for the entire day, a kindness that Marcus had accepted with more gratitude than the situation probably warranted. He knelt down to hug his daughter goodbye, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, steadying himself against what the day might bring. "I'll be back before you know it," he promised. Lily studied his face with an intensity that seemed beyond her years. "It's okay, Daddy," she said solemnly. "Whatever happens, it's going to be okay." Marcus didn't know how to tell her that he wasn't sure she was right. The venue was a historic mansion on the outskirts of the city, all manicured gardens and old-world elegance. Marcus arrived early, as was his habit, and found the grounds already bustling with vendors and staff making final preparations. White chairs stood in precise rows on the back lawn, facing an arbor draped in roses and ivy inside. Florists rushed past with impossible arrangements while caterers argued about timing in hurried whispers. The air itself seemed to vibrate with anticipation and barely contained chaos. Marcus found Victoria in the bridal suite on the mansion's second floor, a room large enough to host its own small reception. She stood alone before a mirror, her wedding gown a cascade of ivory silk and delicate lace that must have cost more than Marcus earned in several months. But it was her face that stopped him in the doorway. She looked beautiful. Yes. The kind of beautiful that stopped hearts and launched ships and inspired poetry through the ages. But beneath the professional makeup and the perfect styling, Marcus saw something else. He saw fear. "Marcus." She breathed his name like a prayer or a curse, her eyes meeting his in the mirror. "You came." He stepped into the room, closing the door softly behind him. "You asked me to be available. I'm here." Something flickered across her face, an emotion he couldn't quite identify. "Everyone else is busy with final preparations. My mother is having some sort of crisis about the seating arrangements. The bridesmaids are getting their hair touched up. I just needed a moment." She paused. "I needed someone steady." Marcus stood silent, uncertain what she needed from him. Victoria was not a woman who showed vulnerability easily. In 3 years he had seen her face impossible deadlines, difficult clients, and board members who questioned her every decision. She had handled all of it with grace and steel. But today she seemed brittle, as though the slightest pressure might shatter her entirely. "Could you help me?" she asked, and her voice was smaller than he had ever heard it. "The zipper. I can't reach it on my own." She gestured behind her, where the wedding dress gaped open, exposing the vulnerable curve of her spine. Marcus crossed the room, his feet moving without conscious decision. He had never been this close to her before. Not in 3 years of working side by side. He could smell her perfume, something with notes of gardenia and something earthier underneath. He could see the slight tremble in her shoulders. His fingers found the zipper pull, the metal small and delicate against his calloused hands. These were hands that had learned gentleness from years of caring for his daughter. From brushing tangles out of fine hair and buttoning tiny buttons and wiping tears from soft cheeks. They moved now with that same tenderness, guiding the zipper upward along the track of her spine. The silk whispered beneath his touch. Victoria shivered. And then, in that suspended moment between one breath and the next, Marcus made a choice. He had intended to say nothing. Had intended to zip the dress and step back and watch her marry a man who didn't deserve her. But the conversation he had overheard came flooding back. The image of Victoria's fire being slowly extinguished by a man who saw her as a possession rather than a partner. His daughter's voice asking if he would ever be happy. The weight of all the words he had never spoken pressing against his chest until they demanded release. He leaned close, his lips nearly brushing her ear, and whispered the words that would shatter everything. "Your husband is not coming." Victoria went rigid beneath his hands. "What did you say?" Marcus stepped back, giving her space to turn, to face him. The zipper sat at the halfway point of her spine, the dress still gaping open. She didn't seem to notice. Her eyes searched his face desperately, looking for some sign that she had misheard, that this was a cruel joke, that her carefully constructed world wasn't crumbling around her feet. "Randall isn't coming," Marcus repeated, his voice steady even as his heart threatened to beat out of his chest. "I received a call on my way here. His assistant. He wanted me to deliver the message." Victoria's face cycled through emotions faster than Marcus could track them. Confusion. Denial. The first sharp edge of understanding. "That's not possible," she said. "We just spoke last night. He told me he loved me. He told me." She stopped, something shifting behind her eyes. What exactly did the message say? Marcus delivered the words as gently as he could, though there was no gentle way to say them. Randall had left the city. Had left the country, actually. On a private flight that departed 3 hours ago. There was a woman involved, someone he had been seeing throughout the engagement. They were headed to a place with no extradition treaty, which suggested the financial improprieties Marcus had suspected but never confirmed. The Pierce family fortune, it seemed, was more illusion than substance. The marriage to Victoria had been designed to solve problems that Randall had created long before they ever met. Victoria listened without moving, without blinking, barely seeming to breathe. When Marcus finished, the silence stretched between them like a wire about to snap. Then, with a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob, she sank into the nearest chair, her wedding dress pooling around her like a surrender. 3 years, she said to no one in particular. "I gave him 3 years. I changed myself for him. I made myself smaller. I let him convince me that my ambitions were too big, my voice was too loud, my expectations were too high." She looked up at Marcus, tears streaming down her face, leaving tracks through her careful makeup. "I almost gave up everything my father built because Randall Pierce told me that's what love required." Marcus knelt before her, bringing himself to her eye level. He didn't touch her, didn't presume to offer comfort she hadn't requested. But he stayed. Steady, present, available. The way he had always been. The way she had apparently always needed without knowing it. "What do you want to do?" he asked simply. Victoria wiped her eyes with hands that had stopped trembling. When she looked at him again, something new had kindled in her expression. Not the brittle false cheer of the bride-to-be. Not the crushed devastation of a woman betrayed. Something fiercer. Something that Marcus recognized from 100 board meetings and client presentations and moments, when the world tried to tell Victoria Winters that she couldn't. "I want to go downstairs," she said slowly. "I want to tell 300 people that the wedding is off. And then I want to drink an entire bottle of very expensive champagne that Randall's family paid for." What followed was nothing like either of them had expected. Victoria descended the main staircase in her half-zipped wedding dress, mascara smeared and dignity blazing, with Marcus one step behind her. The assembled guests fell silent as she took her place beneath the rose-covered arbor and calmly explained that there would be no wedding today. That the groom had revealed his true character. That she was sorry for any inconvenience but not sorry for being saved from a terrible mistake. The chaos that erupted was predictable. Shocked gasps and whispered speculations and Victoria's mother fainting dramatically into the arms of a groomsman. But Victoria stood tall through all of it, weathering the storm she had called down upon herself with a grace that Marcus couldn't help but admire. When she finally retreated to the bridal suite, She brought the promised champagne and something unexpected. An invitation for Marcus to join her. They sat on the floor of that elegant room, passing the bottle back and forth, while Victoria processed out loud and Marcus listened. She talked about the red flags she had ignored. The comments that had seemed romantic at first but revealed themselves as controlling upon reflection. The slow erosion of her confidence that she hadn't noticed until it was nearly complete. And Marcus, when she finally asked, talked about Jenna. About the morning he woke up alone. About learning to braid hair from YouTube videos and cooking Lily's meals and finding joy in the places he had never thought to look. "You're remarkable," Victoria said at some point, the champagne warm in her voice. "Raising a daughter alone, working full-time, and still managing to be the most competent person I've ever employed. How do you do it?" Marcus considered the question seriously, as he considered most things. "I don't have another choice," he said finally. "Lily depends on me. So I show up, every day, even when I'm exhausted, even when I'm terrified, even when I have no idea what I'm doing. I show up." Victoria set down the champagne bottle and looked at him with eyes that seemed to truly see him for the first time. "You've been showing up for me too," she said softly. "For 3 years. The tea when I'm stressed. The cleared schedules when I need space. The way you always seem to know what I need before I know it myself." She paused. "I've been too blind to notice what was right in front of me." Marcus felt his heart hammering against his ribs. "Victoria." She held up a hand. "I'm not suggesting anything. Not today. Today is for drinking expensive champagne and feeling sorry for myself and possibly crying some more." A small smile curved her lips. "But Marcus, I need you to know that I see you. I see who you are. And when I'm ready, when the dust settles and I remember who I was before I lost myself in someone else's expectations, I'd like to know you better. The you outside this office. The you who reads stories to his daughter and paints her room lavender, because she loves that color." The weeks that followed were messy and complicated in all the ways that real life tends to be. Victoria dealt with the fallout of the cancelled wedding, the media speculation, the Pierce family's threats that dissolved into nothing when their own financial crimes came to light. Marcus continued to show up to work each day, professional and steady, while something new and fragile grew in the spaces between them. Their first date was dinner at a modest Italian restaurant, far from the elegant establishments where Victoria usually dined. Lily came along because the babysitter cancelled, and Victoria declared it perfect. She watched Marcus cut spaghetti into manageable pieces and wipe sauce from small cheeks, and something soft settled into her expression. When Lily announced that Victoria was pretty and asked if she was going to be her new mommy, the moment could have been awkward. Instead, Victoria simply said, "I don't know yet, sweetheart. But I'd very much like to be your friend." The relationship grew slowly, both of them too cautious for anything else. Victoria learned to navigate the demands of dating a single father, adjusting her expectations around school performances and sudden illnesses, and the simple fact that Lily would always come first. Marcus learned to receive as well as give, allowing Victoria into the carefully guarded spaces of his life, accepting support that he had trained himself never to need. They made mistakes. They had difficult conversations. They built something real in the spaces where both their previous lives had failed. A year later, on a Sunday morning that felt ordinary in all the best ways, Marcus woke to find Lily already awake and whispering to someone on his phone. He stumbled into the kitchen to find his daughter in serious conversation with Victoria, planning what they both referred to as the secret mission. It took him several confused minutes to realize that they were discussing how he should propose. "Daddy's too nervous to do it himself," Lily explained with the devastating honesty of childhood, "so we're helping." The proposal happened that afternoon in the park where Marcus had first taken Lily after Jenna left. The same park where his daughter had pointed at a lavender flower and declared it beautiful. Victoria had orchestrated the moment with all the precision she brought to her business dealings. But when Marcus got down on one knee, the tears in her eyes were entirely unrehearsed. Lily presented the ring, having insisted on being part of the moment. And Victoria said yes with a joy that came from knowing exactly what she was agreeing to. The wedding was small. Just family and close friends in Victoria's mother's garden, with Lily serving as flower girl and ring bearer combined, because she couldn't choose just one job. Victoria wore a simple dress that she had chosen herself, without anyone else's opinions or expectations. Marcus wore the same suit he had worn to that cancelled wedding a year ago, because Victoria said she loved the poetry of it. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Lily shouted, "Absolutely not," with enough force to startle the birds from the trees and send ripples of laughter through the gathered guests. And when Marcus finally kissed his bride, his daughter wedged herself between them demanding to be included, and nobody minded at all. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that love often arrives in unexpected packages. That the person who saves us might be someone we see every day without truly seeing. That failed endings sometimes become miraculous beginnings. And that showing up, day after day, with steadiness and grace, is perhaps the greatest love story of all.